Welcome back, MTG Joe here. Today we are going to be looking at a weekly metagame breakdown for the Timeless best of 3 format. We haven't done Timeless in a couple weeks actually, just the meta's been a little stale. We've been going through holidays. There hasn't been a huge amount of shift, but we're going to kind of cover it in this case. The best of 1 meta is pretty stock to what we've seen before. So we'll get to a video on that, but for the most part, if you're playing a deck from like 2-3 weeks ago, there hasn't been anything material from Pioneer Masters being the most recent set to really shake up the format that much. The kind of top decks are still the top decks capacity. But we're going to look and see with the latter kind of resetting what is happening in terms of the format. So kind of looking from the untapped data, if we look at, say, Diamond rank with the ladder reset, and today it's basically just Mardu Energy since it's only the second day of the month. If we're looking at Platinum to Mythic, where the Mythic players would have reset to, Mardu Energy is 25%, Boros Energy another 20-ish%, and then Show and Tell. So if 65% here, we'll have some Dimir decks kind of scattered in, but that makes up a large portion of what you could kind of expect in terms of the pillars. So we're going to timestamp and paste all these deck lists if you want to copy paste, so you can find them all in the video description. Same with Untapped, the link for Untapped. If you want to track your games played, your win rates, stuff like that, you can find it as well. You can be like Corey, who when they hit Mythic 7, you can get on the leaderboard and stuff like that. So we're going to look December 10th through January 2nd, so about a month of data. If we just look at the last week, it's not even populating for best of 3. There's just not a huge amount of data there. If we look like the last week, still can't really pull together that amount. So folks, there's a subset of folks who really love this format, the high power level, but collectively relative to the other formats being played, it's just not the highest played. Like even just as kind of the test, Alchemy has more games played right now than Timeless best of 3. So we're not going to see huge dramatic things. We're also going to see some of the win rates be a little bit inflated because there are folks who are very specialized with decks and can pull off high win rates. But the sample sizes are, we're doing a 20 game cap here. Things to kind of keep in mind as we look through. But the highest win rate deck is Mardu Energy. So this one is 83%, 58 games. So we see basically the inclusion of a couple Thoughtseize in the main. These are usually your flex spots, a couple Juggernaut Peddlers. Some numbers of Cthulhu and Nightmare is going to differ in terms of what you see. We see 2 Ragavans, 3 Static Prisons, 2 Swords. So kind of where the removal package lines up, you'll have gives and takes. A full set of Bowmasters here. Your sideboard really just kind of geared for the various matchups with the Lair's Companion. So Deafening Silence for any sort of Storm deck, Show and Tell, anything that's looking to multi-spell per turn. You have a density of creatures, so the non-creature spell condition doesn't impact you as much. Portable Hole kind of for the mirror, for the aggressive matchups. The upside of Portable Hole in the mirror and stuff like that is you don't get hit by Sun Cleanser, and it's just, you don't have to commit the resources every turn in terms of energy. More hand hate with Thoughtseize, as well as Juggernaut Peddler, and then Graveyard hate with Unlicensers. A very clean sideboard there. 1 card, both for this deck and the Boros deck, that did come out of the Pioneer Masters is Wear Tear. So it's one of the split cards, can destroy an artifact, can destroy an enchantment. So a flexible card there that you may want to consider in some numbers. We then have Boros Energy as the next highest deck, so Jengantha Companion. So now Modern Band Amped Raptor in here, but this version here is playing up with a full set of Flages as well as One Ring. We have Blood Moon in place of Fable the Mirror Breaker, Aether Hub providing some energy to allow you to kind of Amped Raptor into these bigger threats, Reno Glory to haste out your Flage, but just the Amped Raptor and a Johnny in your 2-drop slot, so a lot lighter in the 2s since you have these higher numbers. Lightning Bolts over Swords to Plowshare in the main, and then 3 Galvanic Discharges. So a little bit different in terms of the removal package. We have 3-3-3. No Swords in the main, which is... So Swords has a broader range of threats you can hit, but Lightning Bolt's more flexible because in matchups where Swords would be a dead card, you can just go face with the Bolt. You have Surgicals for kind of combo Graveyard Hate, Vexing Bauble, for like Show and Tell against any sort of scam style strategies, Containment Priest for things getting cheated into play, Drannith Magistrate if an opponent were to cast a spell from anywhere other than their hand, Sun Cleanser for the mirrors, Graveyard Hate, and then any of sort of greedy mana bases, you can shut them down with Blood Moon. We have Orzhov Belcher. So one of those decks where Blood Moon makes all their lands red, but this deck here is at 77%, and it's got a couple different lines. You could win like turn 1-ish in some cases, turn 2. But Dark Ritual, Sorin, Saint Alenda, one line. You have the scam packages, so you can Grief or Solitude with Malakir's Rebirth to kind of get that extra value. No reanimates here. You can also scam these on turn 1 and then sacrifice them to generate mana equal to this is mana value. So if you just scam a Grief, you get 4 mana. If you scam a Solitude, you get 5 mana. So kind of value there. You also have Dark Ritual into both Necrodominance and Necropotence, which lets you refill your hand. So your Belcher is kind of your alternative win plan. So turn 1, you could Saint Alenda. You could fairly consistent, I don't even know consistently, but you have the feasibility to turn 1 Belcher and then activate it on turn 2 potentially. So Belcher is kind of your alternate win condition. In your sideboard, you have Leyline of Sanctity. So this is a card that will protect you against targeted discard, burn, stuff like that. Unstoppable Slasher is an interesting one here. It's a threat off Dark Ritual. Oftentimes your opponents will take out some cheaper removal, bolts, or like galvanic discharges. Since they don't really hit Saint Alenda that well, they're going to go heavier on the discard, especially in like the aggressive matchups. So Slasher just kind of comes in and then takes them out pretty quick in terms of damage. Path to Peril, good against the energy decks. Graveyard Hate, heavy counterspell decks, you have Defense Grid. March as a way to gain some life. Fragment is cheap removal. Duress as additional hand hate. So you don't really want to play Thoughtseize in this deck because you're going to be taking damage from Necros. So Thoughtseize basically means you draw 2 less cards. Dimir Frog. So we're going to get to the varied blue-black X decks. So there's the mid-range version of Dimir Frog. We have 3 Frogs, Bowmasters, a full set of Mana Drains, Tamios, Nethergoyfs in here. Various removal options, Deluge as a sweeper main, card advantage with Treasure Cruise, Thoughtseize for hand hate. You have the Brainstorm Tamio kind of combo here, some cheap discard with Inquisition, Cling as a recurable spell that gains you life or draws you cards. You have Bauble as kind of free fodder as well, and other ways you could kind of turn on Tamios to flip. Mystic Sanctuary can rebuy your spells. Lurrus Companion, Bloodchief Thirst, cheap flexible removal, Spell Pierce, Spell Snare, cheap kind of counters, good against like the energy decks, good against like non-creature decks. Stone of Erich, anything that's sacking, they get exile instead. You have Surgical in here, kind of breaks up combo pieces, stuff of that nature. Demonic Tutor is basically just a second copy of any of your one-of sideboard cards. Disruptor Flute, activated abilities, or just kind of, you name show and tell, you buy yourself an extra turn or 2. Meat Hook as a sweeper that can gain you life, and then more sweepers, and then a Licensors for Graveyard Hate. So this isn't the next sequential, but I want to, in terms of win rate, but it's a good comparison. So this is the Esper Tempo version. So very similar idea. You have access to Meticulous Archive and some Hallowed Fountains. You'll notice a breeding pool as well. This version is playing Deathrite Shaman, as well as Swords to Plowshare. So just better kind of catch-all removal with the swords. A lot of the similar concepts you see in this deck here. And then you have Deafening Silence for kind of the combo decks we've mentioned, Ghost Vacuum as a win condition, or just Graveyard Hate. Prismatic Ending, flexible removal, so this can hit, a Resolve, a Johnny, it can hit, like when it flips, Fatal Push wouldn't hit, you can do Goblin Bombardment, stuff of that nature there. Stern Scolding as cheap counters, Thoughtseize for hand hate, and a lot of the cards we've mentioned before. And then there's the Mistman Control, Dimir Control. So this is truly a test of patience for this one here. Your win conditions are Orcish Bowmaster and a Lurrus, as well as technically Bind to Secrecy can steal an opponent's creature. So that could be a win condition. It could also give you a creature from the spellbook. This one is just really an exercise of control and patience. Sorin's Ransom for card advantage that gets around the various card draws. You have to watch, like your opponent should watch out with like flipping Tamio because you could steal it. So just a bunch of counters, removals, really just kind of answering the board. You do have the Memory as well as Bowmaster combo to ping them to death, as well as Archmage, make them draw, ping them to death kind of approach. Damnation as the sweeper of choice in this deck. And then the sideboard, just a bunch of more answers. No additional win conditions get brought in. Yahini's Expertise, is a sweeper that can give you another card to cast. Dispute for the Mirrors. Cry is a sweeper that exiles. Legion's Ending, very good at kind of stealing potentially multiples. Flute as a way to disrupt combos. Tutor again as mentioned. Aether Gust red-green decks. Thoughtseize for hand hate, and then kind of just our combo elements. We then go to 4-color Show and Tell. So Sultai Show and Tell. So core of the deck, this one's at 72%. Play Show and Tell, Cheetahs play Omniscience ideally, kind of win that way there. This version here is actually not playing the kind of full out combo in the sense that it wins the turn. Just kind of playing Cheetahs play big things, kind of win through that condition. So Omniscience is kind of the core. You can go Waterlog Teaching to fetch the Hullbreaker Horde, and then you just have permission up for pretty much the rest of the game, kind of bounce what they're playing. You can cast Atraxa, get cards, then bounce Atraxa, then cast Atraxa kind of effect. Veil of Summer for protection, Bowmasters in the main, Born Upon the Winds lets you kind of play around potential combo stuff. Mana Drain, so a little bit more interactive of a version. You do have Dark Rituals to kind of power you out as well. Your sideboard, you have some Tamios for, actually is an interesting inclusion for like the energy decks, because this like energy will often remove the cheap removal cards, but this is very good against like the Ocelote's Pride and things that are going wide, because you just kind of reduce a whole bunch of power coming your way. But Surgical's in here, Thought Seizes for hand hate, Veils, Abrupt Decay blows up most of the hate pieces. Corrosive Grip, again, for the Mirrors. Commandeer is a really interesting one. You can steal their cards. So you do kind of go down on cards, but if you could steal their Belcher, kind of their big payoff, it can be an interesting inclusion there. And then if you have Omniscience out, it just straight up steals whatever they play. We then have Mardu Scams. This one's at 65%. So we've had various kind of scam decks when they first came out. They've kind of fallen off because fair mid-range is a little rough. But this has got your Grief, Fury package. You can ephemerate them for value. You can Not Dead After All them, or you can reanimate them. So kind of all the value there. You also have Emperor of Bones that can reanimate them. So you get that value. You have Sneak Attack to cheat them in. Imperious Lootmonger can heist your opponent. You got Bowmasters, Fables, Overlord can rebuy them from your graveyard. So kind of a value engine there. Activated abilities. Similar with like Flute, Surgical, you got Vexing Bauble for kind of combo matchups. Wrath Disguise as a sweeper that can hit like Bombardment and kind of go wide in terms of its scope. Blood Moon's an interesting one you can play around. Single Blood Moon though, I think if you're on this idea, you maybe want more. Similarly, I personally don't love Leyline of the Void. You're either going to play 4 or 0. I understand its intent for kind of the combo or like the graveyard focus decks. But if you don't have it in your opener, 4 mana is a lot in this format, especially for like some graveyard decks could just win the turn. You don't want something like Rest in Peace because you're relying on your graveyard, but playing something like Ghost Vacuum and License Hearse could be more reasonable, I think, kind of configurations. Either that or play 4 Leylines. If you're going to be playing Leyline, you want to make sure you have Leyline in your opening hand. Just playing 2, you're kind of playing this weird middle ground. So this one was from Platinum to Mythic, but it's kind of an interesting idea as well. So this is your Frog Reanimator Ephemerate. So you have your Ephemerate package with like Solitude Grief. You have Diviner of Fates that could draw discard. So you have Oculus in your graveyard. You can reanimate it or unearth it. You have Bowmasters. Satura draws you cards. You can cheat out Atraxa as well through like unearth value. So you can't cast Atraxa, but between Reanimate and you can hopefully get it that way there. There's no other color fixing in this deck for the green mana. That's one thing to note. So one thing you may want to consider, I don't know how often you're actually going to get to the 7 lands in this deck, but since there's no Deathrite Shaman, maybe just a 1-of could be an interesting inclusion, just like a 1-of green splash with your duels that you can fetch if needed. Surgicals, Swords, Lavinia for Show and Tell, Graveyard Hate, Boromir for Show and Tell. This also works with Scam Mirrors. You counter their scam since no mana was paid. Glistening Deluge for the aggressive decks, like the energy decks, Lauren, Artifact, Enchantment Hate. Flash this in against Show and Tell, blow up their Omniscience. It's kind of a 50-50 guess. You got to hit their Omniscience. If they put in Atraxa or something, then you kind of lose that guess. Then lastly, I want to share this one here. This one's from Corey. Content creator, plays a lot of Timeless. So they went 16-4. They ended up closing in Mythic 7 we saw at the beginning with Energy, but this is a cool Gruul sneak attack deck. So this deck here is looking to kind of cheat into play big creatures a couple ways. So you have Malevolent Rumbling, Say Its Name, Seed of Hope, ways to put cards into your graveyard, Fable. So you could God Pharaoh's Gift out early. You have Channel that can do that to kind of get you ahead on mana, the treasure tokens here. And then ideally, you God Pharaoh's Gift an Ulamog, it pastes in and kills them that way there. And then if you have stuff in exile, you could sneak attack it as well. Otherwise, it's just a 7/7 that comes in. If it sees something in exile, then you get that value. One Ring to kind of buy you time. Alterac works with the Say Its Name package, Titan of Industry, reasonable card against like Show and Tell. You blow up their stuff. And then you have Inferno, Titan, and Fury, which can just clean up the various items of the energy decks. This is also an Ugin's Labyrinth deck, as well as Shifting Woodlands. So you're attacking on multiple different angles. You can self-mill to have the God Pharaoh's Gift in your graveyard, to then Shifting Woodlands, the God Pharaoh's Gift, and get that way there. Artifact Enchantment Hate, Combo Hate for like Show and Tell, Disruption, Combo Hate, Sweepers for aggressive decks, Endurance for Graveyard Hate, and then another Titan for Show and Tell. That's it for the week. Let me know what you've been playing in Timeless. If you got any sweet brews you want to share, and we'll be back. We'll see what's happening in Best of One, and we'll do one next week if there's some new decks or kind of a shift out in any way in that format. In any case, thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you have a great one, and stay safe in there. Happy New Year's!